Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to be talking about passing the baton. So we've called this a CEO's Guide to Succession and Exit Planning. And I've got some lovely guests that I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. But just before we get started, most CEOs think succession is a future problem until it becomes today's problem. So this webinar really is about value, risk, and legacy. Even the most successful leaders need a succession plan. And I've always, not that I'm a massive football fan, but like that story about Sir Alan Ferguson, who, as we know, built Manchester United into one of the most dominant football clubs in history and repeatedly built winning squads. But when he retired in 2013, the club had no robust long-term succession plan for replacing him. And he'd picked somebody, but they only lasted months. And the organisation lurched through years of instability. And the lesson isn't that Ferguson was a poor manager. He excelled at succession within the teams. But the club as a whole failed to plan for his succession. And for business, I think that's a really vivid reminder. If you don't actively design the transition of your top leader, even a world-class operation can stumble. So let me introduce to you my guests for today. Here we go. You can see their picture twice, just what you've always wanted. So I've got Dave Barnett with me from December 19. So Dave co-founded December 19, which is an independent media agency built on doing things differently and on doing the right thing. He's navigated internal succession in a mission-driven business where the question wasn't just who can run this, but who can protect what makes us different. I've also got Mark Bentley from Initium with us. Mark advises entrepreneurial business leaders on the path to a business sale transaction, helping them to assess their wide range of options and understand the red flags and the green flags that really matter. Then last but not least, I've got Heather Melville from People Puzzles. She's on our team. Heather spent 30 years in HR and is now working fractionally as a people director with ambitious mid-sized businesses across engineering, construction, finance, and health. And Heather loves enabling growth through business change and transformation. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Well, let's kick off with talking about why succession planning matters. After all, most business leaders I talk to are quite happy in their jobs right now, but many of them will say they don't want to be the CEO forever. They're looking forward to a future time when they've got a slightly calmer life. And I think that could be in 3 years, it could be in 20 years. Everybody has got a different point that they're up to. And it doesn't matter whether someone is looking for sale, a management buyout, or retirement, or handing it on maybe to a family member. It all falls under that title and banner of succession. So Mark, I'm going to start with you. What's the single biggest red flag that buyers look at with succession, and why does it impact value so strongly?
Well, it's a great question, and you've already alluded to it with the Sir Alex Ferguson story there. It's overdependence on one or more key figures, typically the owner, the kind of do everything CEO who holds the client relationships, directs the strategy, does the day-to-day operations, proofreads the marketing and makes the tea. You know, if that founder is too involved in day-to-day of the business, then that is perceived by a buyer as risk. And risk is the biggest killer of all deals. And in fact, dependence on shareholders is one of the top 3 red flags, along with financial performance and customer concentration, but that's a different webinar. Basically, if all the value sits with one person, then a buyer will sense that, will see that, and it will dramatically impact not just price, but also the terms. Because if you take one thing from me today is look at your business like a buyer would. And if they look at a business and see one key person, then that's going to, as I say, be a risk element, but they'll want to lock you in. They'll want to, and that may be great. You may want to stay with the business, but if you want to leave and move on and do something else, your brand, like Sir Alex, will loom large over your business, and you really want to create a sustainable business that can move forward. So overdependence is the short answer to your question.
Yeah, real problem. Dave, you've been through this yourself. So can you tell us a bit about how it unfolded and what you learned?
Yeah, cheers, Ally. So how did it unfold? So bit of background on December 19. We were founded in 2010, and we were born to be different. We're in an industry where trust was eroding rapidly between clients and agencies. And we launched with the challenge of being 100% transparent with our fees and in our recommendations. So we were really challenging the norms. And so 12 years later, we reached a strategic inflection point that required some challenger thinking, the sort of thinking that we've applied to our clients for all these years. And it was, how do we keep the business evolving, relevant and profitable, whilst maintaining the very essence of what we were founded in? And I came to the conclusion we needed a new leader. I personally made that decision, and it was the right time to put some fresh thinking at the top. This was based on the media landscape that we work in evolving rapidly. There was a big shift in workplace culture, and the skills required to grow a media agency in 2025 and beyond were different to what they were 12, 15 years ago. So I felt it was only fair on the business that some fresh thinking was injected, and that was from the very top. And I guess early on, after I'd made the decision, there was a proof point that the MD rocked up to a leadership conference, and one of the speakers was about managing millennials. And he sat in the audience and looked round and went, "This is mad. I am a millennial. There's not a problem with managing us. Why am I sitting here?" And it just made me think that we've made a good decision for the future. And then just this morning, I shared a LinkedIn post that was about leadership and conversation between Gen Xers and Gen Zs. And one of the leadership team came back and said, it's not about age, it's not about social dynamics, it's not about experience, it's about attitude, it's about how much people care. And it just really made me think again about that succession and the plan and how we've employed people at every level that care. And I guess maybe it's this webinar made me think a bit more about that. I've been planning succession since the first person we employed. And it is about getting the right people in the business that care. And then you know that they're going to take it on whatever direction it goes. But the biggest learning, stroke mistake, I made during the process was trying to rush it. Jumping to the solution without putting the right processes in place. I'm a business leader. I've grown the business, and I think a lot of people on here will agree that we're naturally prone to solve problems as quickly as possible and not always have the patience to start the process or to go about it the right way. It's just like, right, I've seen the vision, I want to get on with this, let's do it. So I had this vision, I wanted to get it done, and I wanted to get on with it. And so the first bit was a bit frustrating, a bit daunting, but thankfully I did get to a place of getting the right team and process around me and really enjoying the journey so far.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's funny because when I went on maternity leave, I had to find a successor, and it's just, remind me of that journey and that time when you want to solve a problem quickly. So maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. Heather, I'm interested from your sort of people leader perspective, what are those early warning signs that a company is heading towards, let's say, a messy or a risky succession?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few signals actually, if you take the time to just stop and pause. And I think as business owners and leaders, we often spend a lot of time working in the business rather than on it, so we don't stand back. But if I think about the clients that I work with, three common ones that I see time and time again, Mark's already mentioned the first one, and it's around founder dependency or owner dependency. So one founder that I worked with held all the commercial relationships, for example. When he was taken ill, quite suddenly ended up in hospital, and they had projects that were, that were in progress, and they had issues with those projects. There was no relationship within the company with the client to actually solve those problems. So it really put a lot of risk into the business and into future business and repeat business for them. So that was the first one. Second one, I think what I've seen a lot of is lack of communications about what the future looks like. People are scared to actually say, this is what I'm thinking of doing, or this is where the business is going. And what that means is that rumours can often start, particularly if you're thinking about selling your business. You can guarantee that somewhere along the line, people will be picking up on that vibe. I've definitely seen that in companies that I've worked with, where people feel that uncertainty. The rumour mill starts from John O'Groats to Land End, and people end up voting with their feet. They leave, and then you start really hemorrhaging talent, which is what your business is all about in the first place. So you definitely see that, and it really creates significant operational lack of continuity, I suppose. And the third one, which is obviously an element of what we're talking about today, is there's just no simple succession plan in place or training plans in place. So one client I'd worked with and sort of spoken with quite a bit, he'd built up a really amazing commercial landscaping business, been going for 25 years. Him and his brother had started it up. He used to do a lot of contracting business with the very well-known housing builders, those kinds of things. He was looking to retire, and he was suddenly shocked to find out that his son didn't want to take over. So massive scrabble into, well, what does this look like? How am I going to pass my business on? What are my options? It really knocked him for six, and it took about 5 years to get over it. So those are the three that I would highlight.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And that is a long time, isn't it? And already hearing Dave saying, well, two things that were interesting. One is that you started it from the beginning of hiring the right type of people, but that also then you can't rush it. You can't turn it around in 5 minutes. So let's move on and talk about, I guess, why succession planning can't wait and how we can build a strong leadership pipeline. Heather, I'm going to come back to you actually as that people expert. What does a credible leadership pipeline look like in a mid-sized business? And how can you sort of demonstrate that you really are covering key roles?
Yeah, sure. I think it starts with the outcome. So I think if you work backwards, most buyers are actually looking for reassurance that the company is going to go on without you. You spent 25 years building your culture. Dave was talking about that, and hiring the right people. But a buyer wants to be reassured that life will go on and the value isn't just within you as an individual. So there's a couple of things that you can do to help with that reassurance. I'm just going to highlight two of them. One is actually building a succession plan. It's a really obvious one. It's what we're talking about, but it often gets overlooked. So a global consultancy that I used to work with, we created a very simple succession plan with their leadership team and their board. So what we looked at was we were making sure that all of the key roles in that organisation structure, first of all, they were actually aligned with what the business plan was. So they were really delivering value add work. But that we had names in the frame as key successors. Now, those successors might have been people that we would say, well, they're ready now, they're ready in 2 years' time, they're ready in 2+ years' time, and they need some training and development. But we were quite clear in terms of what that looked like and where the gaps were. We also looked at critical roles. So what are the critical roles in your organisation that maybe are really difficult to recruit for, or a lot of knowledge is actually residing in that one person? So there's always some. I couldn't think of an IT person in a particular business that I worked with, and all of the knowledge about the systems resided in him. If he'd been knocked over by a bus, there would have been significant issues and no backup. The other thing that we looked at within that consultancy was, who were the star players? Where was the talent? What are we going to do to make sure that we retain them and keep developing them? Where could they potentially be developed in the organisation? It's really easy to overlook your star players, and they can move on if you're not careful. So that was definitely something there. And that enabled us to actually develop training plans for all of those people, and to develop what we needed to develop and what was missing. But I think, as we've already said, that takes time. You don't just fix something in 6 months or 3 months. So we were looking at building plans over a sort of 2-year period, really, longer than that. I think the other point that I'd want to highlight is governance and continuity. So we talked about owner dependence, and how often owners can be the sole decision makers in organisations. I think it's really important to make sure that you're thinking about how are you making decisions and devolving that. So one of my clients, we sat there and did exactly that. We looked at, well, what are your roles? What are your responsibilities? But what's the next level down? Who are you actually delegating to? Who are you not delegating to that you could be? And it enabled us to put some actions in place to try and devolve that decision-making capacity, and the business, grew through that, really. I'll stop there.
Well, what's nice about that is there's an immediate impact of that succession planning framework, because actually if you can delegate more to people below you, you've got an easier life, hopefully. So I guess it's not just that thing that happens in 2 years' time or an event later. By putting in good plans now, you're helping your business be better and easier to run today, ideally. Brilliant, thank you. Dave, you identified your successor from somebody already in the team. How did you support the rest of the business with that change that was coming, and how do you support that person now who's your new MD? Is that their job title?
Yes, yeah, MD. Yeah, good question, Ali. As I mentioned earlier, I had a vision for what I felt my succession plan looked like, and some of the stuff that Heather talked about, been through. So it was imperative. I had this vision. I was impatient because once I made my mind up, but it was imperative that we had the right processes and people in place to make that transition as smooth as possible. And maybe from those the first few months of once I'd made the decision, that I could see it was going car crash-esque, that I didn't feel in control of it. I got the right people, and a big plug to People Puzzles, because they came in and were instrumental in supporting us in this process. But we went through a 3-stage process, and we had a clear criteria and scoring grid for what good looked like. And given our culture is such a strong part of what makes December 19, it was vital that any successor understood this and was going to take what we'd achieved so far and then build on it. And we were fortunate to have a choice of internal candidates that fitted this requirement. As I say, and maybe this came from employing well previously, and retaining the staff and nurturing staff, which we feel we're great at doing. We did have to make some changes to the company structure before the new MT started to ensure they had the best start and chance of success. And we certainly didn't want to give them a pile of problems to sort out. Here's the job and here's the in tray of problems. It was let's make it as smooth a landing for them as possible. And part of this, we set up an EMI scheme, but for the senior leadership team. And so as part of the whole transition, we wanted the MD, the successful MD got the role, but we wanted the leadership team that would be supporting them to feel they're part of this journey as well. Not there's the co-founders, the MD doing their thing and we're left behind. It was, no, we're all going on this journey together as a team, and we trust you all, and this particular person has been selected for these reasons. And we found that was a very positive thing, and went down really well. How I've supported them. I've tried to give them space to flourish and grow in the role. It's evolved over the past 2 years. So 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, the MD was appointed. We still chat daily, weekly. This morning, I've been on the phone for an hour, just as a sort of a general catch up. We have quarterly check-ins with the SLT that review the last quarter and then set company goals for the next one. Something as a side that maybe I just do, but it's something I wanted to share, was that I seem to give praise to the leadership team and the MD when things are going really well. It's like, oh yeah, look at how great they're doing. When it's not going so well, I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? Why have I put them in charge? And blame myself. So it's just something I think I need to work on more, of sort of where the line stops and starts between success and failure. The ad hoc check-ins vary, from leveraging industry relationships to dealing with finance and operations. I've tried to bring him out of the day-to-day. You mentioned this earlier, Ali. So he's got the headspace to think about the future and the stuff that we want him to be doing, to take him away from the job that he was doing before, but also gives the people underneath the opportunity to fill that role. So he was a senior person in the business anyway, so had senior relationships and doing important work for the business, and the people below can hopefully and have seen that's an opportunity to fill that gap. So yeah, I think that freeing up headspace from day to day, and trusting the team around him to deliver sort of bigger and better things for the business. And 2 years in, it's been a great success.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. Mark, really interested in your perspective here. So from a deal perspective, how much does that leadership depth and I guess what you can see under that potential founder role, how does that influence buyer confidence and value? You touched on it a little bit, but can we hear a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge positive. So if you can imagine, selling a business is a long and challenging process if you're going to the open market. Slightly different deal structure to the one that Dave has described. But so you'd spend a lot of time in preparation. Part of that is identifying exactly the kind of things that both Heather and Dave have talked about. Who are those other people on the right seats? Who are the other strategic C-level people, senior leadership team who can take it forward? So a key part of that preparation when you sell a business is producing what's called an information memorandum, which is a long, detailed, overtly financial document. But a large part of that should be dedicated to the people, because people buy people, right? And it's all about the confidence that you can engender in a potential buyer or investor, that this business is sustainable, it is well structured, and it's ready to move forward. And in fact, one of the key things that we do here for the right businesses is we actually sideline the founders. We'll sideline the CEO or major shareholder in negotiations with buyers, and we'll let the senior team be there facing and fielding questions in the room, literally in the room with us, with the potential buyers. So because they're the experts, right? You know, your commercial team, your sales director, he'll know more about, or she will know more about sales than maybe the CEO will. So it's getting the right people to answer the right questions. And of course, there's the added bonus there that you make the founder who wants to exit look redundant, look like they're not really important. So that is, you know, like a spare part. So that is key. And that has actually been a really common theme on some of our recent clients we've been working with. Our major contact, weirdly, is not the CEO, or rather the majority shareholder. It's their management team. And they've been strong enough to delegate the whole process to their senior team. And of course, Heather, I think you mentioned it earlier. Again, this is back to thinking like a buyer. This is the talent that's going to take the business forward, your senior team. So if they're incentivized and aligned, if they're involved in the process, engaged, talking to the buyer, they get to feel what their opportunities are moving forward. And I mean, talent is so crucial, whatever the sector, whatever types of business we're working with, talent is crucial. And there is, of course, a term in our world. It's the world's worst term, and it's an acqui-hire. So buyers sometimes buy businesses just for the people. So acqui-hire, and that is a prevalent theme, I think, in today's market, because recruiting and retaining talent is tough. And of course, if a business is considering becoming employee-owned or from within, like we did, we bought out our founders in 2022, you've got to have a management team in place. That's one of the legal requirements. So it is super important, and it gives buyers confidence, and allowing that team to be engaged and involved in the sale process is really the silver bullet.
Yeah, so you can't just sort of set this all up and sell a business without your leadership team and management team being ready for and take on the burden, I guess I can call it that, because as you said, it's quite a difficult and long process. Yeah, so it takes a lot of planning. I mean, we're getting that message loud and clear, I think. So let's talk about the person who is handing over the reins, that founder transition, Dave being our shining example of that today. And I know we've got some founders listening in today, because probably they're the person that this scheming all starts with, or the planning, maybe I should call it that. So Dave, when you step back, what was the hardest part of your transition? And what do you wish someone had told you beforehand?
Good question. Cheers, Ali. Picking up on Mark's point about making the founder majority shareholder redundant, that was a surprise to me. That my ego was thinking, "Oh, hold on, I was the MD of a really successful business, and now I'm redundant, but it's all my own making." So there was a challenge there. But I think there's obviously been points where it's been tough. And I say, aside from my ego taking a kicking a bit along the way, but I, deal with that personally, and that's fine. But I've always referred to December 19 as my middle child, and this is part of them growing up. I've got two children, and December 19 was founded between the birth of those two, so genuine middle child. And so whilst I've had that fear that they're now growing and making their own decisions without my full control or approval, the business will learn by its mistakes, and in that still value my opinion and ask my advice on the bigger issues that are troubling them. So that kind of, look, whatever trouble you're in, please call me, nothing's a problem type relationship with the business. And then passing over sort of the sharing of responsibility has been a gradual process. And I'm still coming to terms with how that works. Sometimes I'm sort of very much involved, and sometimes not so much involved, but more from how I'm feeling the team need my support, not me waking up one morning and going, "Oh my God, what's going on? I need to know everything." So it's been from very humble beginnings. That was myself and my business partner sat in a room where we lived and died by every single decision that we made, to a multi-million-pound business where hundreds of decisions are made daily, we've got no knowledge or consent of. And there's kind of that trusting the process. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to be anything. I've put a team in place to do exactly this. I can't then sit here going, "Oh, what's going on? I don't know what's going on," and have that fear about it. So it kind of comes down to what you can and can't control. And as we've grown, we've always put culture and attitude at the heart of the business. And if we've selected the correct leadership team and wider staff, then the succession plan will work. It will be maintained, and the culture will maintain and grow. And so it's putting trust in the process that I've started, that myself and my co-founder started, and the people that are in it. What would I have wished someone had told me beforehand? I think it's trust your gut and then build a team to support you and your vision. We're business leaders, and we've got to this place by trusting our gut a lot, but it's really important to put the right people and team around you. I'd wish I'd done it sooner in terms of getting the right people, but you learn by your mistakes and you get on with it. And my final thought on it, if it's not a level path stepping back, and sometimes it feels like I've stepped too far away, some others not far enough, but it's just all dependent on what's happening with the business at the time and what the leadership team and how they need my support. So it does feel like I've got a growing up teenager, adult child in the house that is doing its own thing, but is still there and needs me from time to time.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a good analogy for sure. Heather, you've obviously been on the sort of advisory side when companies are going through this change. How do you advise that founders should manage the uncertainty that you mentioned it earlier, the rumors, the instability that it can cause? What do you recommend?
Yeah, it's a real delicate balance, right? So on the one hand, you want to be transparent because you want to build trust with people and the people that work for you. But on the other hand, there's also this opportunity to be really vague, which doesn't really help things as well and fuels anxiety. So it's trying to find that right path, and that will be different. There was one business I was working with a couple of years ago where they were basically selling out to a competitor, was about 6 months work around due diligence and trying to work out what potentially a deal might look like before it got into the semantics of it. So there was change, there was uncertainty. People were picking up that something was different. So three approaches that we took, three approaches that you could take if you were in this situation was, first of all, we acknowledged things, we didn't avoid things. So we made sure that the communication that we were putting out there, we were acknowledging the speculation, we were acknowledging some of the rumours, and we were quashing those down, where it was appropriate to do so. But we weren't avoiding what was being talked about, and I think that was really important. We committed to updates as part of that, because there are rumours out there, so I promise I'll come back to you next week, next month, even if I don't have any new news for you. So I think that was one thing, was acknowledging, not avoiding. I think linked to that, we used what I would call anchoring messages. So we talked about why we were looking at change. So we focused on what wasn't changing. So all of this is staying the same. But we also focused on, actually, what we're looking at is how we can grow our business, how we can continue the prosperity of our business. So we tried to anchor around some purpose and opportunity in all of the messages that we were giving out. So that was pretty, I think, pretty helpful for quashing some of the uncertainty. And I think the other thing is just trying to differentiate between facts and feelings. So people feel uncertain, people feel anxious. But actually, if you can acknowledge, going back to what we were saying, if you can acknowledge that, but actually you can deal in facts and saying, well, actually, this is where we are. This is, this is how we're going to answer these questions. That provides a bit of ease in terms of some of that anxiety. So that's probably three things that I would say you could tangibly do, but not an easy path. It's constantly fine-tuning it.
Well, and the funny thing is that there's not really much not much certainty in so much at the moment, right? The economy and the tax regime and tariffs. I mean, the idea that any one business is on a straight path with no change looming and no leaders ever leaving, it's just a myth, isn't it? And I sort of feel like the one thing we've all had to learn in the past 5 years is just to be ready for change. And I guess there's, that's a whole nother part of sort of training and developing skills in our business about living in a world of uncertainty, a business economy of uncertainty, and, having a plan, but being able to react. So it's,
and I think just to add, if you can build on that and frame that around with positive intent, then you're also building that into your culture, aren't you? If you're talking about change, and change is continuous, but you're looking at it from a positive standpoint, people get used to that. Yeah, it becomes part of the muscle and part of who you are, as an organisation.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Mark, how does the founder's clarity or lack of it about their future role affect the deal structure or the buyer's confidence? Because they might not know if they want to do what Dave's done and stay involved a bit, or buy the yacht and sail into the sunset, or the dinghy, depending on the deal that you might help them get.
Well, that's right. I mean, clarity is always good. And you have to remember that a good buyer or investor is going to ask you as the founder the most terrifying open question of all, which is, so you've got a great business, why are you selling? And the positive part is there's no wrong answer to that. That's your personal reasons or your reasons as a team, but you want to be clear and be able to articulate it. And ideally, you want to be able to stick to that. It is great to be able to be flexible. Buyers might ask you to stay for X, Y, Z, or change this, that, and the other. Being flexible is fine rather than intransigent. But if you become erratic and start moving the goalposts during the process, and remember, our dream for our clients is to generate not just one potential buyer, but a range of them, so we can negotiate the best terms and price and the best fit. I mean, we've talked a lot about culture. Many of our clients often don't go for the top price. They go for the buyer that they feel is going to be the best home for their business moving forward, which is absolutely as it should be. We've mentioned it a lot today. People like me don't often say this enough, so I'm going to fly the flag for selling a business is an emotional transaction, not just a financial one. And not enough focus is on the person, the Dave in this scenario, and how much of the identity of that person is wrapped up in being a business owner. So it's great to have a plan, and it's great to be able to stick to that plan, but in the white heat of negotiating the sale of your business to another buyer, ego can take over. I feel comfortable saying it now. Dave mentioned it. I was going to say pride, but yeah, ego can take over, emotion can take over. Because if you've been calling the shots in your business for 20 years, suddenly somebody that you either know or don't know, somebody from overseas, comes over and their shiny suited lawyers start picking a hole in your business and what you've done. You get defensive. And as you know, we encourage our clients not to think about their business as a baby or as a child, but as a commodity. But of course, that is easier said than done. They're very often emotionally involved into it. So our clients can take that personally, or business owners generally can take it personally. So we spend a lot of time coaching our clients and their senior team, so the shareholders and the senior team, how to react to these kind of scenarios, how to react to that questioning. We do role play and dry run. But I've got a story for you. It's from a few years ago, so I feel comfortable sharing it. But so this was an owner in his 70s at that point. And when on the first day of meeting us, he said, "I'd love if you can sell to XYZ Limited," which was a German buyer. And we did. We got this German buyer in the frame. They were by far his preferred buyer. Negotiations were going really well. They even chartered a private jet owned by the company to pick him up for some negotiations. So it's all looking amazing. We're all thinking, yes, this is the one. But he went off piste. He ignored and ripped up the script. So in the meeting, he was saying, "Do you know what? I've built this business from nothing. I hold the relationships with clients," all the things that Heather was saying earlier. "I've really driven this brand forward." And the buyer, very polite German business, they smiled and they said, "Thanks for meeting." The very next day, an email drops in our inbox to say, "We're pulling out of this process. This business is clearly too dependent on its 70-year-old CEO." And, you know, it's heartbreaking for him and of course for us, but it was the white heat of talking about the business and just not being disciplined enough. And that comes back to my earlier point. Let's try and keep the founder out of those negotiations. Let's make the business look sustainable. Let's make it look as if it's a going concern moving forward without that individual. Easier said than done, but there's an example of what not to do.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because Dave, you were talking about gut reaction earlier, and gut reaction mixed with discipline, it's sort of a rare set of skills, but I think very important for shrewd business owners in this kind of scenario. So look, we talked about strategic, emotional, financial, you know, parts of succession. And I do just want to quickly check in. I'm just going to give you like a minute or two each. Can you all share one pitfall? I've had one already from you, Mark, but if you've got another one, real life consequence of sort of getting some of this succession stuff wrong. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, cheers. I've touched on this through this webinar, but it was having the vision of what I knew that I was ready, and I knew the business needed it. But not putting the plan in place at first and then getting to a place where this seems very daunting and maybe a bit trapped by the business. Like Mark, sort of some of the comments Mark was saying, it's just like, oh my God, the business is too dependent on me, or I need, how do I work my way through this thing? But then once we'd got the right people in place and the right team and the right structure and the right processes, so it's been really enjoyable. So gone from having this vision and going, right, now's the right time, to, oh my God, this how are we going to do this? Can't do this. It's too difficult, to a place of, oh, this is fun and it's worked out well.
Well, the reality is most people only do this once in their businesses, right? So if you're trying to do something that requires a brilliant plan and amazing execution, but you've never done it before, or you do it once every 10 years, it's not the kind of skill set you maybe have in your back pocket. And hence, I guess, getting a bit of help with making sure you do it really well. Heather, I'm coming over to you for the next pitfall. What have you seen?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's knowledge resides with people. I see it time and time again in organizations, large and small, actually. So often whether it's the founder or whether it's somebody in that particular business, holds a lot of the cards and people aren't necessarily aware of it. So bringing it to life, I was working with a client. I'd been brought in to help with a deal that was going on. It was a business sale. So I was on the seller's side of the deal. And during the course of this deal, it became very apparent that they had a head of IT, and then they had a significant gap with 3 or 4 people that were reporting to that head of IT, but there was a massive knowledge gap and capability gap between them two. No successor, no thought to it at all. It also became apparent that that head of IT knew all the access codes, knew where all the bodies were buried, knew all the details about how that business ran. Nobody else did, not even the founder actually, because they put all their cards into this one person. When that deal went through, that guy decided he didn't want to work for the other business. So he resigned on the day of the deal or just before. All this information and this knowledge walked out of the business, and it crippled the handover of that business sale. It took months to get around that, really. They had to pay for extensive IT consultants to come in and try and work out, what's going on here. So really interesting one. Yeah, knowledge resides with people. Be very careful.
And actually, so it's not just a plan for succession, but it's like business process. Yeah. Things that you might not think come under the succession header. Mark, what have you got for us?
Yes, I've got one that's pertinent to the market as it is currently. So I'm sure many people on this call will be currently being approached by buyers or investors, the dreaded tap on the shoulder, whether that's down the golf club or formally. So the big pitfall, if you're not prepared, is engaging too soon. So by which I mean suddenly revealing sensitive commercial information about your business to a potential buyer who you don't know at that stage how serious or otherwise they are. It could be a phishing exercise, particularly if that buyer is competitive to you, a larger competitor. So the way around that is to have this kind of incident room. You already always have a team around you that in the eventuality that a bid is coming in, you know how to respond. Obviously, the correct answer is press pause. Don't give away the crown jewels. But I think this is quite common because you could actually seriously damage your business and blow the potential of a sale, even if that party is genuine, because it's likely, as you said, Ally, you're only going to sell once or maybe twice. So you lack the experience, but your buyer is probably a serial acquirer who's done it many times before, who has a trained army of lawyers and people whose job it is to identify businesses like yours. You need to redress the balance. You need a home team that can be internal. So you could identify somebody to be, chief bid dealer or something, but to have a corporate lawyer in place, obviously, maybe somebody like us who are there to just give you that support as and when it is useful. So the pitfall is, if you're not prepared, you can be tempted and flattered to engage too soon with a buyer.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. That's brilliant. I just want to draw a few things together. You've said it a lot of times between you have to have a plan. Succession planning does not happen overnight. Heather mentioned 2 years. It's something that if you're hiring great people today, you can start fitting them into your succession plan that goes through the business, making sure you've got not too much dependence on the founder, that key relationships are being held by a number of people in the business, which, by the way, is really useful if you are just having to go for a 3-week operation or round the world holiday, or things that founders never get round to either of those things, I don't think. So what does the succession plan look like? We're not going to go into the depths of that today, but hopefully we'll pull together some stuff after the call today. But I don't think succession plans are rocket science either. You can build them quite quickly, put a picture together, and then it's about making sure people are trained, people know the opportunities, the career progression within your business, and that you're getting things just out of people's heads and into processes and systems. So I've got a nice question here from Jeremy. Thanks, Jeremy. How would you help a founder trust the next generation of leaders enough to let go? So Heather, I'm going to ask you this one because I know you're a qualified coach. How do you get a founder to that place where they can actually trust and aren't just going to get their sticky fingers in all over everything and take back over?
Yeah, it's quite a common one, isn't it? Letting go, fear of letting go. You see it a lot in leaders. I think one of the things you would do is you would obviously sit down and explore that with a leader in terms of what's behind that fear, what are the worries. But I think one of the practical steps that you can encourage that founder to do is to actually get to know that next generation of leaders. They might be making quite a lot of assumptions about what they're capable of or not capable of. So trying to actually get to know those people, put aside some of those assumptions and start delegating, getting them involved and actually see them in action. So then you'll get a better feel for them, and maybe you'll find out that actually, what you thought is different in reality. So that's one way I would approach it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Have you got anything to add from having trusted somebody?
Yeah, I think it's Heather makes a really good point with the delegation. Is just get yourself out the way and give them the opportunity. And there was a shift in my mindset of like, oh, I don't want them to be doing, I don't want to put that on them. But actually, if I put them on role reverse, I'll be going, all right, I'm being given all this responsibility. It's great. I'm being given autonomy. There's trust. And so I think it's a really positive, not seen as I'm being given loads of work by the founder. It felt like, you're giving them space to grow and develop and go on a journey with you to take more responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's just a really important one, just building on that, because people learn by doing. So if you don't give them the opportunity to actually go do something and learn it, then actually you're getting in their way, you're stopping their development. And I don't think that's a great thing that you want to be as a founder.
And there's probably quite a safe way to do that, isn't it? It's not like you're just going, here you are, have it. Don't ask me any questions. You're going to live or die by the success of this one thing. You do things with people, you show them, you help them plan, you listen to what they're going to do, and then you give feedback. So it's, it's probably not you're not doing it at 1,000,000 miles an hour, are we? Either that's come out loud and clear today. This is an interesting question, Mark. I'm going to ask you this. What if I'm not sure whether I want to sell, pass it on to family, or bring in outside management? How would you help somebody, and can you plan for succession without necessarily knowing the end game?
I think that's a brilliant question, and the short answer is it not worth building your business to exist without you, whatever your plans are? Because actually, in shaping a business for a potential exit, for a buyer, for an investor, for an MBO to pass on to your employees, you're actually building a better business. And even if it's your name over the door, you can, you will not be working there forever. So planning a business so it's buyer ready, so shaped for a potential exit process or a sale process, is actually building you a more sustainable, potentially more profitable, certainly less risky business. So, and if you've done that planning, if you've done that strategic thought about your business, adding value. So I mentioned risk at the very top of the webinar. It's a simple seesaw. The greater the risk, the lower the value, and vice versa. So if you focus, put your buyer hat on or your investor hat, think about your business dispassionately, not like your baby, like a commodity, and start reducing those risk elements. Regardless of your plans, you're building a better and hopefully more profitable company. And then you hold the choice, you hold the cards. You're not reacting to a buyer's tap on the shoulder or the fact that, oh, I've got to leave. You've got a great, sustainable business that can move into the future with or without you. You have options.
Yeah. I think there's a really interesting question here. What if you start planning for succession now, but actually your timeframes change? So, Heather, I'm going to ask you this one. Like, say you do a 3 or a 5 year plan, and then you think, oh, I had wanted to sell, but now I don't want to. And actually, my kid might be ready in 10 years. Does that cause problems if you've done some planning for it and then you don't go through with it?
I think the short answer is you need to keep your succession plans alive. So if you create a succession plan, then revisit it once a quarter. The hard work is actually putting it all together and taking the time, to start with, but actually keeping it alive and keeping it real, using it in your recruitment decisions, checking in on the training plans that are coming out of it. It doesn't really matter then if you're growing, then you're just adding to your succession plan. You're looking at okay, I've got this person here that would be fantastic for growing that part of the business when whatever we're looking to do in terms of growth. So that gives me a gap in my succession plan. I need to think about how I might fill that. So it becomes a living document that helps you with those day-to-day decisions in relation to people and your business.
Yeah, and I guess it could actually help you launch a whole new country or area or product line or something.
Absolutely.
That because you've got that person ready for the next level of responsibility, you can take advantage of that. Yeah, brilliant. So I'm going to take this as our last question. What would you advise a future leader that has been selected? What would you, sorry, let me try that again. What would you advise a future leader that has been selected to do to prepare for the transition? Does that make sense? So top 3 things that you're advising a future leader. I'm not sure if I'm reading this question badly, but it's not entirely making sense to me. Let me try again. What would you advise a future leader that has been selected to do to prepare for the transition? Okay, I think I've got it. Who wants to take this one? Any keynotes, top 3 things that you're going to prepare?
Yeah, I'll answer it, Ali, having sort of gone through that process. I think that getting them to fully understand where the business is now, where you've taken it to, and they should know that because, well, I guess in our situation, it was an internal appointment. So it was they knew that, but if it's an external, it is where is the business now and what's the plan? What's the 3-year plan? And having agreement on that and then allowing them the space to fill some stuff in. What's their vision and letting them own it, I think was really important to sort of have that level of first a mutual understanding of where you are now, where you would like to get to, but then letting them have this ownership on how you get how they're going to get there.
Yeah,
I'm going to build on that actually, just with another aspect. Leadership can be really lonely. So the amount of leaders that I work with that find it a very lonely place and they don't have a sounding board. So I would say get yourself a sounding board, get yourself a coach. If you're going to be transitioning, then you've got that safe space to actually talk about stuff, try out your plans, and go and do things. So get yourself a sounding board or a coach.
Yeah, brilliant advice. And actually, preparing for the future is always important, isn't it? I mean, that's drilled into us as business leaders. You can't just go into the future without a plan, without an idea of what you want to happen, without that sort of 3-year, 1-year picture of where you want the business to go. And it's the same with people, isn't it? You have to make a plan. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. I'm just going to share our last slide here. So hopefully that has been useful and you've enjoyed hearing from our wonderful panel of experts. And if you would like to receive some stuff from People Puzzles on succession, please put a 1 in the chat box. If you want to have a chat with any of the panelists following today, please pop a 2 in the chat box to arrange a chat, or just send us a message, LinkedIn, email. We absolutely love talking about things like succession, future planning, who we need in the business, how we get our people stuff right. And we're going to continue to talk about that because, in our opinion, many businesses don't do enough to think about the future. And even if you don't want to do that, I'd really encourage you, choose one part of your succession plan to pressure test in the next 30 days. That could be a session with your senior leaders. It could be you sitting on your own thinking about what is my succession plan. It could be the leadership pipeline or the people story maybe that you'd present to a buyer. I know Mark's really happy to chat to anyone who's thinking of starting on that journey and looking at what a business sale or exit might entail. And the reality is succession isn't about stepping back. It's about moving the business forward and thinking about your next steps. So please connect. Thank you very much for joining us, and drop us a note. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate having your expertise in the session. Mark, Heather, Dave, brilliant as always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.